Imagine discovering an object over 2,000 years old that looks strikingly similar to a modern battery. Not a weapon, not a piece of jewelry, not a forgotten tool, a battery. If ancient people really understood electricity, it could rewrite one of history's greatest assumptions, that electrical technology was born only in the modern age. But is that extraordinary claim supported by evidence, or has one mysterious artifact sparked a legend far greater than the truth? The story begins not in a laboratory, but in the dusty ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq. This land, often called the cradle of civilization, gave the world writing, mathematics, and some of humanity's earliest cities. Hidden beneath its soil lay thousands of artifacts waiting to be uncovered. Among them was a small clay jar, unlike anything archaeologists had seen before. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, but inside was a copper cylinder, and at its centre stood an iron rod. The combination seemed strangely familiar. To some researchers, it resembled the basic components of a simple electrochemical cell, the same principle that powers a battery. In 1938, Austrian archaeologist Wilhelm König, then working at the National Museum of Iraq, examined one of these unusual jars. The artifact had reportedly been recovered near Kujut Rabu, just outside modern Baghdad. It stood only about 15 centimetres tall. Yet its unusual construction immediately caught Koenig's attention. The copper tube had been carefully formed from a thin sheet of metal. An iron rod passed through its centre. Both were sealed with bitumen, a natural asphalt widely used in the ancient world to waterproof structures and containers. Why would such different materials be assembled inside a sealed ceramic vessel? The design seemed intentional, but for what purpose? Years later, one bold idea would capture imaginations around the world. What if filling this simple jar with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar or grape juice, could produce electricity? Could an object crafted nearly 2,000 years ago have generated a small electric current? Or are we seeing modern technology reflected in an ancient artifact that served an entirely different purpose? The answer is far more fascinating than the mystery itself. To understand why the Baghdad Battery became so famous, we first need to examine how it was built. The artifact itself is surprisingly small, about 15 centimetres tall, roughly the height of a modern coffee mug. Its outer shell is a simple clay jar. Inside sits a tightly rolled copper cylinder. Running through the centre of that cylinder is an iron rod, carefully held in place by a seal made from bitumen, a natural waterproof material commonly used in ancient Mesopotamia. At first glance, these parts may seem ordinary, but together they form a combination that caught the attention of scientists decades after the jar was discovered. In a modern battery, two different metals are separated by a liquid capable of carrying electric charge. This creates a chemical reaction that produces a small flow of electricity. The Baghdad artifact contains two different metals, iron and copper. If the jar had been filled with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar, fermented grape juice, or lemon juice, a weak electrical current could theoretically have been produced. This idea was tested several times during the 20th century. Researchers built replicas using the same materials and filled them with acidic solutions. To their surprise, some experiments generated a small voltage, usually between half a volt and 1 volt. The results proved one important point: the design could produce electricity. But that raised an even bigger question. Just because something can work as a battery, does that mean it was ever intended to be one? That single question has divided historians and archaeologists for decades, and the answer remains far from certain. For many people, the experiments seem to settle the debate. If replica jars could generate electricity, then surely the ancient artifact must have been designed for the same purpose. But archaeology is rarely that simple. An object's ability to perform a task does not automatically reveal the purpose for which it was created. Imagine discovering a 1,000-year-old bowl that can hold water. That doesn't prove it was made for cooking. It may have served an entirely different role. The same caution applies to the Baghdad Battery. Although the replicas produced a small electrical current, no archaeological evidence has ever shown that the original jar was connected to wires, electrical devices, or any system that used electricity. No switches have been found, no copper cables, no lamps, no machines, no written records from the Parthian or Sasanian periods describe the generation or use of electricity. For many historians, this silence is difficult to ignore. Some researchers have proposed that the jars may have been used for electroplating, coating metal objects with a thin layer of precious metal using electricity. Laboratory experiments have shown that electroplating is possible with simple batteries. Yet archaeologists have found no workshops, no tools, and no surviving artifacts that clearly demonstrate this process in ancient Mesopotamia. Without direct evidence, the electroplating theory remains an intriguing possibility, rather than an established fact. So while the Baghdad Battery could produce electricity under the right conditions, there is still no proof that ancient craftsmen ever used it that way. The mystery, it seems, is no longer about what the jar could do. It's about what it was actually made to do. If the Baghdad Battery wasn't designed to generate electricity, then what was it actually used for? Over the years, archaeologists have proposed several explanations, each supported by different pieces of evidence. One theory suggests that the jar was simply a storage container for valuable scrolls or sacred documents. The bitumen seal would have helped protect its contents from moisture, making it practical in the dry climate of ancient Mesopotamia. Another possibility is that it served as a container for religious or ceremonial objects. Similar clay vessels have been discovered throughout the region, often associated with temples or burial sites. In this view, the copper cylinder and iron rod may have had symbolic or structural purposes rather than electrical ones. Some researchers also believe the artifact could have been used to preserve delicate materials such as papyrus or parchment by keeping them inside a sealed environment. While this idea remains speculative, it demonstrates how many practical uses such a vessel might have had. Adding to the mystery is the fact that only a small number of these jars have ever been found. There is no evidence of large-scale production, workshops, or collections of connected devices that would suggest a widespread electrical technology. Perhaps the most important point is this: archaeology depends on evidence, not possibility. An object may appear capable of performing one function, but without supporting artifacts, written records, or clear signs of use, historians cannot confidently identify its original purpose. Today, most scholars agree on one thing: the Baghdad Battery remains one of the most fascinating artifacts ever discovered, not because it proves the ancient world had electricity, but because it reminds us how much of our past is still waiting to be understood. So, was the Baghdad Battery truly the world's first battery? The honest answer is that we simply don't know. The artifact's design is remarkable. Modern experiments have shown that when filled with an acidic liquid, it can generate a small electrical current. That fact alone makes it one of archaeology's most intriguing discoveries. But possibility is not proof. There is still no direct evidence that the people who created this vessel intentionally used it to produce electricity. No electrical devices have been uncovered alongside it. No ancient texts describe its operation, and no archaeological discoveries have confirmed that electricity played a role in everyday life in ancient Mesopotamia. For many historians, the Baghdad Battery serves as a reminder that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yet its mystery continues to inspire researchers, engineers, and history enthusiasts around the world. Whether it was an experimental device, a ceremonial object, or simply a cleverly designed container, it challenges us to look beyond assumptions and ask better questions about the past. History is filled with artifacts that don't fit neatly into our expectations. Each discovery reminds us that ancient civilizations were often far more skilled, creative, and innovative than we once believed. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the Baghdad Battery isn't that it proves ancient people mastered electricity. It's that there are still chapters of human history waiting to be uncovered. And somewhere beneath the sands of the ancient world, the next discovery may completely change what we think we know. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Stylus Sword, and join us as we uncover the forgotten civilizations, lost technologies, and unsolved mysteries that continue to shape our understanding of the ancient world. Until next time, keep exploring the past.